Sega emerges from obscurity to steal the show at the gaming awards. Arcade1up is back with their best deals of the year, and we're going to take a deep dive into the Atari 2600 Plus with some unboxings, and then take a look at the game pickups from this year's KC Retro. So let's get into it. Hey guys, thanks for joining us and welcome back to the channel. Some of this may seem familiar to you because this is the second time we're doing this stream. Uh, in case you missed it, I did almost the entire thing and the mic wasn't working. So I got a new mixer in, and apparently I did not test everything well enough with StreamYard. So there you have it. So let's get into this. I'll try to pick up the pace a little bit. If you haven't been living under a rock, you've likely seen all across YouTube gaming space that Sega made a huge announcement at the Game Awards. And wow, for somebody like myself who grew up in the 80s and 90s with the Nintendo and Sega console wars, this was huge. I love both these companies, and it's nice to see Sega break out from the same routine where they're just releasing Sonic and Persona over and over and over. And quite honestly, Persona is not my cup of tea. uh, Sonic hasn't been something I've really been interested in since maybe the creation of Knuckles. And the adage when these shows quote unquote jump the shark and they start adding in new characters, it's the same way with Sonic. First you got Tails, then you got Knuckles. They just kept adding new and new characters. The 3D games were kind of meh, but here we are. Sega's back, and they're relaunching all their classic, not all, but tons of their classic titles. So Jet Set Radio, a new version, Shinobi, in what appears to be a Metrovania style, is back with their 2D side scrolling. Crazy Taxi, I mean, that looked fantastic. 3D versions of Streets of Rage and Golden Axe. I mean, I could not be more excited for these titles. They look fantastic. What a great lineup. And of course, more are coming. They've hinted to investors that Virtua Fighter is currently something they're trying to think of how to bring to this modern era. I'm just super excited. One of the things I've opined about, and a lot of people will say I'm crazy, is that with a lineup like this, with announcement like this, could it be, and stay with me here, could it be that Sega is preparing to release a new console? I know. Their last two consoles, the Saturn and the Dreamcast, were failures and really put the company in financial trouble. And they crawled into a shell, right? Falling back on Sonic and Persona, and just kind of living there. I know we've seen a few other titles, but nothing spectacular, nothing with huge hoopla. And so it's rife with risk. But what I would ask is take a look at where we are today, right? We're standing on the precipice of the end of one console war, right? Xbox, Microsoft has been pretty vocal about their lackluster sales around the Xbox. They're pivoting to more of a software company and focusing on releasing their titles across other platforms. And really, PlayStation and Nintendo are far ahead of them on this generation, even though Nintendo hasn't yet entered that generation. Still, the Switch outsells like crazy. So could it be time for Sega to jump back in? I for one would welcome it. I think there's an opportunity there, and We know they've been kind of dabbling in hardware with the Genesis Classic consoles, and that they are currently talking about how to bring out a Dreamcast one. But um, is it realistic? And a lot of people are just going to say no. It costs too much money. You lose money on the hardware. Why would they take that risk? And I would stipulate that other companies are showing that the cost and the complexity of producing new consoles is actually going way down. Take a look at Analog and how they're releasing all these modern retro FPGA consoles, right? You have Valve releasing the Steam Deck. You have Asus with their version. You have companies like Ambernic releasing all these new modern handhelds. I think, and of course Evercade, who can forget them? I think there's a possibility that Sega could come out with a fairly um, budget console, right? They could take a Nintendo um, strategy and release something that isn't necessarily super state of the art, but is very playable, will play these games well, um, and put a new system in the hands of consumers at an affordable price with the ability to deliver these new games online. That cost to bring the stuff to market comes down, and I think why else announce such a huge swath of titles all at the same time unless you are building towards some sort of big release. Now, will it happen? Probably not. I mean, let's be realistic. It's not likely to happen. Most of these companies are probably looking at staying more towards software. Certainly, Sega has been doing that for a long time. They famously shut down their Sega arcade in Akihabara, 2 years ago, maybe a year ago at this point. But, we can hope. So next up, let's talk Arcade1up, right? So there are two good deals going on right now. We've talked in the past about Arcade1up's lackluster lineup. Home arcade space has been pretty flat for the last year, with iArcade going out of business, with AtGames announcing new consoles, new systems, the 4KP pinball, the new 4K Legends Ultimate, but none of those have actually come out yet. Well, at least we've seen the 4KP, but that's not expected to ship until the end of the year or early next year. Um, Arcade1up has spent most of the year just re-releasing the typical titles they do every year, but in deluxe format. But fine, but they have released a couple new titles, right? So first up, is probably the most exciting sale of the season, and that is, and don't want to get copyright strike there, the Fast and the Furious. So this is currently on sale for $3.99 at Best Buy. The sale will likely last throughout the weekend for sure, maybe a little bit into next week. But if you're interested in this cab, I would not sleep on that. Again, $3.99 at Best Buy. This is a cabinet that's regularly $5.99, so that is a great discount. Got to be honest with you up front. This is a kind of take it or leave it cab. It's a release from Raw Thrills, who developed the game. They say this game comes with two games, Fast and Furious and Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift. It really does not. It comes with Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, where they've removed the tracks that were in the original game and broken them off, and then called that Fast and Furious as its own standalone game, even though it's really just part of the other one. It's also missing much of the iconic cars from the films that were in this game originally. That's a licensing issue, so forget about the Mitsubishi Eclipse, forget about the Mazdas. So it's frustrating to see really the most iconic cars in the game not there. Most people seem to enjoy this. It's really a successor to Cruisin', so a lot of people do enjoy the game. But you should know what you're getting into if you're going to buy this one. It is currently Arcade1up's only cab that you can link multiple cabs together up to 4. So at $3.99, you're starting to get into that territory. Well, hey, maybe you pick up 2 and link them together. Um, Probably need to come down even more for me to do something like that. But man, at $3.99, good price, great price to see something new drop that low for the holiday season. Next up is one we've talked about before, and that is um, the sale for Time Crisis. Um, Previously spoke after Black Friday. This was on sale at Wayfair for $5.99. Um, and then it went off that Monday. So if you missed it, you missed it. Well, it is back. It is $5.99 right now at Amazon. Again, I would not expect that to last too long. Um, Wayfair's deal was probably a little better because if you had not purchased anything from Wayfair, you could grab an additional 10% off by signing up for their text service. But still, with Amazon, if you have an Amazon card, you can get 5% rewards. Of course, if you have any credits saved up, you can use them and even lower that cab. Free shipping, all that stuff. Great deal. Check it out. And that's that. Next up, right? This is something I've been talking about for a while, have been waiting and waiting for this to show up. It originally started shipping a couple weeks ago. And I unfortunately don't know how it happened, but my order did not make that first batch. So this did arrive um, yesterday. So I've been really wanting and chomping at the bit to jump into that. So let's jump over to the unboxing table and take a look at the Atari 2600 Plus. And I did pick up the complete releases, which include the console, a extra controller for 2 players, the paddle with 4-in-1 cart, and Berserk and Mr. Run and Jump titles. So we'll just get this box open here. Here we go. And looks like it's not packed very well. It's all thrown in there. But right on top, there's our 4-in-1 paddles. Berserk looks like the joystick. But let's get this off here and start getting these out of the box. All right, here's our 4-in-1 cartridge and paddles. And that's a pretty hefty box. Then we have our Berserk, and these are the exact size of the original cartridge boxes. So that is cool. They line up great on the shelf next to the originals that I got. Here's the first new game for the 2600 Plus. This is Mr. Run and Jump. It's a game that is available on other systems, but is new to the Atari or newly ported to the Atari. And here's a joystick. And then lastly, we'll get this console out here. Oh, this is stuck in the box a little bit. It's in there pretty snug. And here we go. So what more can you say about that? We'll go through here and unbox each one real quick. Before we do that, I wanted to talk a little bit about this console. It's one I've been really excited about, and not in the way you might anticipate, right? It's not that I have a ton of retro nostalgia for the 2600. I certainly had one. My father or parents bought me one when maybe I was 3 or 4 years old. Um, and I had quite a few games on it, but I got to tell you, Nintendo is where this nostalgia for video games comes from me. So why did I buy this, right? Why did I jump on this 2600 Plus when it's announced? And I'll say it's um really more for what it represents than what it is. So the 2600 Plus is a modern retro console. It does use emulation, so not FPGA like something like analog. So, you know, could have been better than what it was, but for the price, I understand why they went that route. I will say the emulation is unique to this device. It is not using uh, the open source emulation that's out there. It is not using the same emulation that, say, the Retron 77 did. So that means it supports more titles than all of those do, which is really cool to see. But it is not comprehensive. So not every retro cart of Atari 2600 or 7800 you have will work, but a lot of them do. Um, so I decided to support this because it really represents a strategy that I want Nintendo to take, right? I would love nothing more than to see Nintendo release a new NES. And so let's just get into unboxing the console and while we talk more about that. So let's head back over to the unboxing station. All right, here we go. So here's the box. And again, I'm saying that um I want Nintendo to do this, right? I want Nintendo to release a modern version of the NES. Why, right? Um, I think, um, having the ability to play those vintage carts on new, reliable, modern hardware is awesome. It is great, and it's a great way to get use out of those old cartridges and share the nostalgia with family members, right? To sit down with your kids or your grandkids and be able to play these original games is fantastic. But more so, I think it's important um, to recognize we're in a pivotal time in the video game industry, right? We're seeing this shift, and it's been moving that way for a while to move from physical to digital. And we're far enough along that trail that we are seeing the ramifications of moving to digital, right? Where on one hand, it may mean less package, less stuff, right? It's clogging up our closets and our shelves and the landfills. But what it also means is you don't actually own anything. Case in point, the Nintendo has shut down the 3DS stores and the Wii U stores. So your ability to download maybe games that you purchased but hadn't downloaded is gone, right? You can't ever get those again if you lose those. That's just not right. But even more so, earlier this week, we saw the first real tectonic shift in this space when Sony announced that they lost rights to Discovery Channel video content due to the merger with HBO Max. Um, well, you can understand why maybe they can't sell new video content to customers because they don't have that license. Certainly, everybody that bought those shows or those episodes, not just rented them, but bought them, can still use them, right? Well, no, Sony went in and deleted them. They lost all that stuff. They can never access it again. That's not right. That should not happen, right? And so maybe there's a need for some sort of um, digital, consumer bill of rights. But until we have something like that, right? It 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 behooves people to turn to um, these physical mediums and the physical time and embrace those companies that are doing that, right? Here's an opportunity for Atari to release a nostalgia filled console that will let people play all those games they've been collecting and holding on to, but two, allow the company to release new titles, right? We talked about Berserk on here, which is an enhanced edition of Berserk. So you have the original game and then some added to it. We talk we're gonna show you here in a little bit Mr. Run and Jump, which is a new game that can be played. So imagine the NES, right? A new Nintendo. Not only can release those old titles, like companies are already doing, right? You have Limited Run, you have all these other companies, Retro 8-bit or IM 8-bit, whatever it is. these companies re-releasing old titles in new cartridges, new packaging, for the people that missed them or can't find the original um, vintage carts at an affordable price. Well, you can get them now, right? And um, wow, how cool would it be if Super Mario Brothers 4 was released for NES, right? Or Legend of Zelda 3 finally came out, right? These are all titles that were in the works and ultimately did get released on other systems under different titles. But what I'm saying is you can release new titles on those old systems. Nintendo can re-release new titles. Other companies can jump in and release new titles. And we know the development costs of a modern AAA game can be in the hundreds of millions of dollars. They take years to develop. They take teams of 100 or 200 people to develop. They often release prematurely because the corporations are so dependent on hitting quarterly profits that they'll rush a game out and then hope to patch it day one to a functional state. Oftentimes, losing half of their consumers in the process. But what do they care? They already sold the game. Who cares if you play it, right? Um, it's just bad for gaming. It's bad for the future of the market. Well, but those games are still great, right? So we still want those. We don't want to see those go away necessarily, but there's room to bring these old systems back to let these same new companies with new developers and new techniques put those into old systems for much less cost, right? You could develop a whole new game for a fraction of the cost, something that would still be affordable to consumers, something that they own, something that they can share the nostalgia with their families. Um, I just think it's uh, a great opportunity, and so I wanted to support Atari in that effort. So let's jump in, and we'll open the joystick here real quick. Um, like I said, I think it's a great idea. I think this packaging from Atari looks great. I think it's clever to put the top-down view of the joystick on top. These joysticks feel much like the original. Definitely, you can feel that resistance in the movement on the stick. The button feels the same. And of course, as you notice, the plug, it works both in the new 2600 plus and in those vintage 2600 and 2800 consoles. I will say, I think the base is a little smaller, maybe a quarter of an inch, half an inch all the way around. But it is that definitely that original feel. So next up, let's take a look at the paddle uh, controllers and the 4-in-1 cart that comes with that. So this box is interesting. It's a little thicker than all the other ones. One of the interesting things I notice is these are sticker sealed, but not on the bottom. So I guess if you wanted to tell people you kept them sealed, you could always open these from the bottom and take the stuff out that way. I'm not interested in doing that, so I'm just going to open that. But again, great packaging here. You get the shot of all the 4-in-1 cart and the paddles on the front, on the back, screenshots of each one of the games included on the cart. One of the interesting things with these cards is not only do they come with these slip covers, which is pretty cool. It's something the original games never did. But the original games that were multi-carts did have this dip switch feature, right? So there's no menu system with the 2600 or the 2600 plus. So when these games launch, you need some way to determine which game should load. And so the dip switches allow you to do that. And again, this cart is classic. The way it slips in is a little tight, I'll say, but it comes out very easy and smooth. Unlike something like the Retrons, where once you put a card in, it's like in the uh, grips of the what do they give the jaws of death or whatever. They're really in there and they're hard to get out. So next up is the paddle controller. Of course, what can you say about these? They're for 2 players, 1 connection, which is nice. So you only have to hook it up in one place, but on the same time, you can't really sit too far apart from each other. These are slight I wanna say, I don't think these are exactly like I remember the originals to be, size-wise. They certainly do have that original tennis thing on there. Um, the buttons, uh, I don't know, they're not mushy, but they're not clicky either. They're kind of in between, and the spinner on here has a lot of resistance. I don't know what to think about that. I think it's gonna be hard to play something like Breakout, when your spinner doesn't, spin very well. So, let's, take a look at Berserk. And again, great packaging. I mentioned earlier it is the exact same size as the original carts. I do have a handful of those. I have of course, ET which, and if you don't have one of those, even if you hate Atari, you gotta have that game in your collection. It's symbolic of everything that was wrong with the Atari. It was a game rushed out super fast. It wasn't very good. It sold like crazy. People hated it, and it killed video games for a long time. It's why Nintendo and NES looks like a VCR, and we have these big carts because everybody was afraid to enter the video game market back in the United States after Atari blew it up. And of course, ET has that fun history behind it of supposedly having tons and tons of copies thrown in landfills. That was just rumor for years and years until what, 5 or 10 years ago when, they were all found and uncovered, which is crazy. In a big landfill having all these boxed copies of, ET. So it's not expensive. They made, as we mentioned, overproduced the thing like crazy. So if you don't have it in your collection, go get it. It's worth having. It will work on the Atari 2600 Plus as well. I also have, like, Kangaroo, which is kind of useless. Um Batmania Challenge because everybody needs a wrestling game. And then I have Ikari Warriors for the 7800, which is one of the games I'm really looking forward to playing on this. I love Ikari Warriors. I think it's a great game, and I love that unique control stick, which you can get one from GRS. They have their Ikari stick that they have out now. Um, if you're, looking to hook that up to various systems and consoles and again, it comes this game, Berserk, comes with the slipcase like the other ones, but no manual, so it's kinda disappointing that there's no manual in the box, but, good looking cart, um, you know, pretty much identical to the originals. So, yeah, Kari Warriors, I'm really looking forward to playing that. I don't know how you do that on on an Atari when you have 1 button and no rotation, uh, but, I am definitely looking forward to, seeing how that works. Of course, I've seen pictures of the game, so I know what it's gonna look like. I just can't fathom how it's going to actually function. So let's take a look at Mr. Run and Jump. Again, this is a game that's out on other systems. Um, you know, it's basically a runner, right? You just run and jump over holes going from screen to screen. This has been completely redone for the Atari 2600. So here we go. We have a new title. This is an example of what I'm talking about, where these developers can release new carts, not just homebrews, not just independent developers, but real production companies and stuff can release new titles for this system. So if Nintendo wanted to make, a new title and for the 2600, they could if they wanted, right? They won't, but they could. So it's kind of cool to have that open. And now that Atari owns Atari Age, we see a lot of embracing of homebrews. There is supposed to be a new firmware out for the 2600 around Christmas that's going to really improve the compatibilities with a lot of other games and homebrews. So really excited to see that. So that does it for the 2600. And now I want to talk about the fun stuff. Right? Last weekend we mentioned We were out at KC Retro. Um, Great event here in Kansas City. I go every year. Nate puts on the show. He does a great job. It's getting bigger and bigger every time I go, which is good to see. We don't have a plethora of vintage game stores here in the area, so it's great to see a convention flourish where maybe these retail outlets really aren't. Would love to see some more, especially on the south side of town where I am. The few that are out there, there's only two. They're way far on the east side, out in the Independence area. Great stores, good stores and stuff, but would love to see some really focused video game retailers and resellers out here because we just don't really have them. It's kind of frustrating. But anyway, I digress. This convention's great. They had a couple big guests. Gaming historian, which is there again this year. He was at the last one, and Jay from the Game Chasers was there. The big thing is, I was looking forward to seeing was Unico, who was going to bring out their Nova Blast Candy Cab. We missed them day one. We were out there all day. They had reached out and said they would be out for day two. They promised. On day two, they sent a message saying, "Hey, we're running way behind, but we will be there at 2. We promise we'll be there. We're not going to miss it." I want to be clear, like they had a medical emergency on their team, and so I'm surprised they made it at all, and I'm glad they definitely put the effort in. Unfortunately, I left early. I just could not stick around, so I stayed until 3:30. They did not show up until 4, but Cool Toy was there as well, waiting to see the Nova Blast, and he got some good shots of that. Got to spend a little time with it. So check out his video if you haven't yet already. Really looks cool. Something I'm really interested in. The price point apparently is going to be a lot more affordable than the rumors and some of the numbers we've heard thrown out. Again, watch Cool Toys video. He's got a lot of great info on it. And we just wanted to, hope Jay's feeling better with Unico. He had an accident and won't go too much into that. But I can't imagine getting that stuff to the convention the next day. And so hopefully he is feeling better and we get a chance to connect again in the future on that. So I missed it. Check out Cool Toy. It does look great. And give me 1 second here. I want to get set up to show you some of the other titles I picked up. So I'm going to do these in kind of a reverse chronological order. And first up is a game from a series that I love. I get to, it's a platformer and a character that is really creative and great. The game is not just a good platform, but it really taps into your creativity. It's one my wife and I really like to play co-op together. And so I thought we owned every version of this game, but here is one I don't know how this slipped my mind, but it is Little Big Planet kart racing. Yeah, so much like Mario Kart, you take your sack person and you drive around and race karts. So this thing it looks great. I can't wait to actually play it. Hopefully you can play split screen co-op. But you can see these levels are really creative. Not only that, Little Big Planet is known for being able to build your own levels, and in this kart racer, you can build your own tracks. I mean, how cool is that? That is not something we've ever seen from Mario Kart. Um, so if this if this game is any good, and it might not be since I never heard about it, and they've certainly never released any sequel. I hope it is. I think it really looks decent, but I am really excited to check this out, um, and get a chance to play that. So that's that one. And so let's move back in time just a little bit, and we're going to jump into uh, some pickups from my favorite franchise outside of Nintendo. Um, as an 80s kid, right? Growing up in the 80s, in the era of slashers and great horror films, um, great B garbage horror films that you would go rent every weekend, and have sleepovers and watch these really horrible things like Chud and Maniac Cop and you know uh Phantasmagoria, you name it. um Horror is where it was at. So um when Resident Evil came out on the PlayStation, and we really had our first real horror game, right? Like launched the survival horror genre. Um, I just had to have it, and I've been addicted to Resident Evil ever since. I've purchased every version that have come out. I just love the thing. Now I've sold a lot of those over the years, so they come and go in and out of my collection. But this is something that I found, that I was really surprised that I would find at this convention, and that is the Biohazard Director's Cut on PlayStation. Um, Vendor that had this, had a really decent selection of um, more unique and more higher end stuff. And so to find something like this Biohazard in there was just awesome. Like, so I had to have it, and I wish I could remember his name, but I want to give a shout out to him because uh, I didn't expect to find this. He gave me a great deal. You know, awesome. So next up, right? If you got Biohazard, right? What you need, you need Biohazard 2, right? Right? You got to have Biohazard 2 if you got Biohazard 1. So naturally I got that. But what's better than Biohazard 2, right? Um, what gives you more value, as nostalgia may say, right? Well, another Biohazard 2, this time with DualShock support. Yeah, I mean, come on. Come on. With DualShock support, this is awesome. But what's even better than 2 copies of Biohazard 2? Well, that's also the Resident Evil 2 version of the game, right? The US release. So, like I said, I've had all these over time. They come in and out of my collection, so it was nice to have another one in the collection. And there is Biohazard 2. Um, Great game. We get Claire Redfield, and of course, one of the most iconic characters of the series, who is the lead character in Resident Evil 4, which is perhaps the best Resident Evil game that was ever released. So happy to have those. They are complete and in pristine condition. Again, shout out to that dealer for the great price. But what would a PlayStation Biohazard collection be without Biohazard 3: The Last Escape? So this is obviously in the US release, it is Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. But here in Japan, it is called Biohazard 3: Last Escape. And this is one that takes place in the city. Jill Valentine is back, and you have to escape the city before the Nemesis hits. So great. All right. Was a great find, great surprise to see there. Super happy I was able to pick those up. and they will be in my collection for a long, long time to come. Now, another surprise find at the convention for me, um, is a game I kinda had wanted for years on this system, but never really did. Um, and when I saw this, I had to have it. Uh, we've talked before that the Analog Duo, ships Monday, December 11th. I and so, I do have my pre-order in on that one. And, I had the TurboGrafx 16 growing up. I only had 2 games for it, right? Keith Courage and Splatterhouse, which Splatterhouse was awesome. Speaking of horror, right? Don that, hockey mask and smash, various monsters and creatures, but man, the game was hard. Anyway, the probably the most iconic platform on the TurboGrafx 16 is Bonk's Adventures or Bonk's Adventure, singular, right? I need to give a shout out to Mr. and Mrs. Dill of Glendale Heights, Illinois. I appreciate you selling or unloading your copy of Bonk's Adventure because it made its way into my hands. I am super excited to have this one. It, of course, is complete on the inside. It does not have the outside box, but of course, it has the original jewel case, the complete manual, and it's in good condition. And of course, the cart with the slip case, the HU card, I should say, and the thing holding it in. The back of the cart has, the thing. It does have a little damage on the back here, but again, happy to have that one in my collection and ready to put it to use here when the Analog Duo arrives. This next title is one I had growing up. Again, I mentioned I had sold my collection at different points in time. And when I saw this one, it was very affordable. And so I just had to pick it up because it was one I had as a kid, right? And so it tickled that nostalgia bone. And that is Spider-Man on the Sega Genesis. So also goes by the name Spider-Man versus Kingpin. It was not only available on the Genesis, it was available on the Sega CD. The Sega CD version had animated cutscenes, not that great, but they were there. This was not a great game. I mean, it was okay, decent for the time. It never really like I talk about having it as a kid and it tickling that nostalgia. I never really played it a ton. Played it some, but this was not really one of the games that caught a lot of my attention. There were definitely other Genesis games that I enjoyed more than this one. But like I said, it was very inexpensive, and I'm glad to have that back in my collection. All right, we're going to step back a little further, right? We're going to get into that late 80s era and really dive into the world of Nintendo. And this is the one I am most excited for. I've never shared on this channel, but one of the things when I got back into collecting retro games again, I wanted to challenge myself in collecting something different than what everybody else was doing. I wanted a challenge that would be hard to complete, take a long time to complete if I could complete it at all, but also bring things I've never experienced before into the collection. And so I decided that I was going to collect Famicom cartridges, right? If you're not familiar with these, the Famicom is the original Nintendo system. It was released in Japan as the family computer. The cartridges are about the size of cassette tapes, like that. They're thicker, obviously, but they're small carts. The cool thing about the cartridges in Japan is they were multicolored. So you had all these different colors. The art on Japanese games and cartridges is just amazing. The other great thing is the Japanese really take care of their stuff. So while you can find a lot of trashed games here 40 years later, you actually find far more really good condition games on the Famicom. So I have uh, currently post the convention, right? I have 721 different Famicom carts in my collection. Um, Means I need about 300 or ish to complete the set. So you can imagine I have quite a few, and am going to be happy to show you those at a later date. Um, but for now, I wanted to take some time and show you what I picked up at this convention. And first, I have to give a shout out um, to a dealer who has been a large part of helping me get this far in my collection, and that is Retro Game Enthusiast. You can find him on Instagram at Retro Game Enthusiast. Definitely check him out. He vends at a lot of different conventions around the country. He does a podcast with a few other people. He is also attempting to collect the entire Famicom system. Uh, Great guy, always hooks me up. You find him at a convention. He gives great deals on these because he buys, you know, large lots and large collections, and really just tries to recoup what he got out of them when he has his doubles. And so, um, great guy, great opportunity to pick up some games. So I picked up several that I did not have at that convention, and I am going to do the risky thing of trying to pronounce the names of these correctly. Some of these I will do better than others, so forgive me if you do speak Japanese. I apologize because I'm going to butcher these. So first up, if we can get that to focus, right? This is Jajamarugu ki ma din Maboroshi no Kinmajo. This is an RPG or action adventure RPG. Looks kind of cool. I'm interested in playing it. I do have the other one. It's from This is from Jaleco. I do have some of these other Jajamaruguki Madin games. Um, and so that's a great one and happy to have that. It is one of these oversized carts. So these are bigger than the normal Famicom carts as far as how high they are. And here's the back. So you can see unlike the American ones, they actually put um, additional pictures on the back, right? See, not always, but on these bigger ones, you typically can find screenshots of the game along with other information. So the frustrating things about these big cart ones is it's nobody sells protectors for those, and I do try to keep all of these in protectors. One, to keep the art from fading on them, and two, I don't want them to get dusty or destroyed or anything like that. Um, but yeah, nobody I've talked to has ever, you know, has ever found good protectors from. Of course, you can get poly bags and stuff, but no, none of these like uh, you know, protector cases, whether they're the thin ones like you'll see in a minute or some of the other ones. It's kind of frustrating. But so if anybody ever makes them, there's a market out there for it, whether you realize it or not. But the uh, anyway, next up is an interesting one. This is Super Mogura Tataki Pokun Mogura. Uh, this is whack-a-mole, basically. This is a whack-a-mole game. It does have a um, game, or it's like it's a pad. So, like, the pad games for some of the athletics ones that were released later on the NES. This has a game pad that has the different holes that the creatures can come out of. And so you interact with it, you slap the holes, and you whack these moles. So that's a cool one. Interested in really playing that here in the future. Next up is Golf Go Open. So that's an easy one to say. uh, this is an interesting one. It is a typical golf simulator, but it takes things up a notch. There's some, how Japan loves some risque stuff. There's definitely some risque stuff in this game. Um, and of course, the Japanese love their baseball. So next up is Taito's Kyokyoku Hariki-ri Stadium 3. I do have 1 and 2, so 3 was the one I was missing to complete those, so glad to have that one. Uh, this one's kinda cool, like, you can see the covers have these little kinda, like, claymation looking, characters on them. So, again, like, the reason I collect these, not just for these great, games for the NES, a lot of which never came out in the United States, is the art on those. They're really creative. Um And yeah, I mean, I think they're just great. So here we're gonna see the next up is the first, non-standard black colored cartridge. And this is a theme that runs in some of these Japanese Famicom games. This is really kind of the first one. So we have Imagineer from Imagineer. This is Isaki Shugiro no Keiba Hisho Gaku. It's horse racing. So the Japanese love their horse racing. They actually had a modem for the Famicom in Japan, and you could bet on actual horse races. That one is just a game, but there are cartridges and software where you could load up and make actual bets on horse races. So, pretty interesting. And that game's pretty simplistic. It reminds me of some of those carnival horse racing games, where you spray the water. Very simple, just moves from left to right. Plays Camptown races like they all do. Next up is a game from Namco. So another golf title. This is the Namcot Classic 2. So filling a hole in the collection. So you'll find a lot of sports titles in Japan and a whole lot of baseball specifically. Um, Namco, has a ton of them. Of course, Namco um, made the bases loaded series, and there were a lot more bases loaded in Japan than there were in the United States. This next one is the second in a series, and I do have the other one, but this is Ide Yosuke Meijin no Jisen Mahjong 2. Um, the interesting thing about these is they came with a unique controller, right? So let's see if I can get that on there. An actual kind of mahjong controller. So it was unique for this game. Very cool controller if you find it. Um, Again, nothing like that ever released in the United States. So pretty cool. The next up is a title from Irem. You may recognize the character on here. Certainly a very detective looking fellow. But this is Nishimura Kyotoru Mystery Supa Express Sa Sujin Jiken. Sorry. So, what can you say? It's a murder mystery game. This is more, Japanese love these kind of interactive novels, right? And that's really what this is. It's very much like picture based and text based. So you're trying to solve some sort of mystery on a train. What could it be? There was actually at least 2 other Sherlock Holmes titles. That one doesn't carry the name Sherlock Holmes, but sure looks like him. Next up is American Dream. And Boy, what could this one be? Nothing says American Dream like gambling. So this white character on here um, is in many other titles on the Famicom. He is a coconut. So I'm guessing somebody shaved his shell since he is solid white. But there you have it. And he is apparently addicted to gambling. So when he's not playing pachinko in his other games, he's visiting America and playing slots. So in this game, you guessed it, you travel around to different cities in the United States, go to casinos and play slot machines. So, hey, there you go. You want to play some slots? Pick up American Dream. Here is another one. This one is from Bandai. This one actually looks pretty interesting. It is Space Shadow, obviously a some sort of shooter. So really interested to try this one. It looks good. I tell you more about it, but I don't know all that much about it. Um, but hey, why not? Why not like just take a look instead of me talking about one I don't know anything about. Oh, yes, I do know this one. So this is a apologize for the flashing. It should have a warning with this. Um, I'll pause it here so it stops flashing. This is a light gun game. So this is a shooter, and you shoot aliens in this. One of the things that is really different in the United States versus in Japan when it comes to these light gun games. In Japan, the light guns were way more realistic. So, again, in a future video, I'll do a game room tour, and when I'll do that, I will show you my uh, revolver light gun for the Famicom. They also had a submachine gun light gun that was available in Japan, and they both look realistic. Of course, they're still just toys. Quite a difference from the space gun light zapper sold in the United States, the gray or the orange, and of course later when they made like the Super Scope 6 and all those other ones don't look that look like bazookas and nothing like real guns. But so there's that. So last but not least on the Famicom front, I mean this is critical for anybody that has uh, any business they need to get done, right? Uh, Forget Microsoft, forget Apple, when you can go on the Famicom and get your business software. So this is Family Basic. It did come with a keyboard originally, and you could use to program on it. It's not spreadsheets, but I do have some of those. It's not used for stock trading, but I do have some of those. But if you wanted to, again, do some basic programming, this has you covered. So, like I said, those titles brought me up to 721 total carts. Can't wait to get more, especially some of the heavy hitters I still need and share those with you over time. And we are reaching back a little further in time, and we'll take a look at some Atari 5200 games. So it seems to be an Atari theme tonight, but it is what it is. First up is a Kangaroo for the Atari 5200. Again, this Kangaroo game pops up again and again and again when it comes to Atari. I mentioned earlier I have a CIB version of this game. Um, what can you say? It's a game about a kangaroo. And of course, it was an arcade game. So those of you who know, you know. Um, Next up is Countermeasure. And this is an interesting one. And so let's just take a look. As you can see, it's more of like a strategy war game, and you're a tank, and you try to avoid getting killed, obviously. So this is one of the more interesting games from Atari. You can see the difference between a 2600 and a 5200. You get a little more in depth there. So pretty interesting. Mainly, a former boss of mine gave me his Atari 5200 and a whole bunch of games. It's a system I never had or played as a kid, but it's pretty cool. I mean, it's definitely a step up from the 2600 graphics wise, and so I've enjoyed collecting for it. I've added several new titles to that. It's a small enough release. I can't remember off. I think there's 70 some titles on that system. So I've decided, hey, when I find ones I don't have, I'll pick them up and I'll work my way to see if I can get to a complete collection. But what collection of Atari wouldn't be complete without real sports, baseball, and football? What can you say? Forget Madden. Um, you know, Forget all these. I don't know what the show, MLB, the show. These are where it's at, right? These are the titles that everybody wants. And don't take my word for it. Like, just take a
Hello
look.
there, everybody. This is Atari Real Sports. For you baseball fans, Atari gives you super pitching, hitting, and stealing. And with Atari football, there's outstanding running, kicking, and long balls. Hey, touchdown! How about that? New Atari Real Sports. Folks, it's almost as much fun as being here.
These Super Sports graphics only on the new Atari Super System.
Yeah, I mean, like, seriously, doesn't that make you just want to rush out and buy that game? It's so realistic. I mean, man, EA wishes they could have quality titles like that. So we're rounding out our pickups at KC Retro. We're going to step back in time just a little further and circle around to that Atari 2600. First up is Raiders of the Lost Ark for the 2600. You know the game, you know the movie. Now you can live it.
Can Indiana Jones escape from the forces of evil? Can he survive 13 fiendish situations? Will Indy make it all the way? Find out in Atari's Raiders of the Lost Ark adventure game. It's diabolically difficult. It's mysterious. It's never the same twice. And it's only from Atari.
And last but not least, also for the Atari 2600 and soon to find playtime on my Atari 2600 Plus, is the legendary, the greatest of the films, Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. What might be the definitive edition of Star Wars video games.
Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back, a great movie. Now a great video game. A movie which challenged your imagination. Now a video game where the challenge never ends. You saw Luke Skywalker battle the Imperial Walkers. Now bring the battle home. The Force was with Luke Skywalker. Will it be with you? Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back video game for your Atari and Sears video game systems from Parker Brothers, the ones to beat.
I mean, who can't remember the greatest developers in video game history, Parker Brothers? Nothing says more about why the Atari 2600 and the video game industry failed when every company and their brothers were out there making video games. I get Parker Brothers makes board games, but let's face it, they don't make video games. So that's it. That was my pickups, or was it? I think I mentioned that I went on a Zelda cartridge challenge. So stay tuned for the next video to see how that goes. Hopefully, get that up sometime uh, over the next couple days. I am have some time off coming, so I will have plenty of time to make some videos. I plan to put out quite a few over the next couple weeks. So smash that like button and hit the alarm if you want to get a glimpse of those. Give the video a thumbs up. I really appreciate it. Leave a comment below. What did you like about the pickups? Are you excited about any of the deals from Arcade1up? Are you going to pick up Fast and Furious or Time Crisis? And lastly, come on, Sega. Come on. Put a 1 in the chat. Drop in the comments. Do you think they're going to come out with a new console? I'll cross my fingers. I won't bet on it, but my fingers are crossed. So once again, thanks for joining us. Thanks for hanging around. This ends take 2 of this video. So appreciate you coming back, and have a great one. Have fun. We'll see you on the next one.